The RMS Titanic rested in the harbor at Southampton like a sleeping giant carved from steel and dreams. Everything about the ship commanded awe: the shining black hull stretching nearly 900 feet, the towering funnels painted in the warm yellow of the White Star Line, the endless rows of portholes glowing like tiny stars. Crowds gathered along the pier, some cheering, some crying, some simply staring at the majesty of the ship that newspapers called unsinkable. The morning air tasted of sea salt and coal smoke as steam billowed around the masts and rigging. Among the passengers boarding that morning was 19-year-old Eleanor Hayes, her brown hair tied neatly beneath a hat decorated with pale ribbons. She clutched her sketchbook as she followed her father up the gangway. To the outside world, Eleanor seemed like a girl who had everything: wealth, education, beauty, and opportunity. But inside she carried a restlessness she could not explain. Her father, Thomas Hayes, a stern businessman with ambitions stretching far across the Atlantic, believed this voyage to America would shape her into the kind of daughter he wanted: poised, refined, obedient. Eleanor, secretly, hoped America would shape her into someone entirely different, someone bold, independent, alive. In a different world on the very same ship, Liam O'Connell bought his third-class ticket with years' worth of savings earned from working as a blacksmith in Belfast. He had watched the Titanic being built piece by piece, but he had never imagined he would actually sail on it. His life in Ireland had been small: work, sleep, repeat, but his dreams were enormous. He dreamed of America like a man dreams of breath after drowning. His mother had died young, leaving Liam to care for his younger sister Nessa until she was old enough to move in with an aunt. Now, for the first time, Liam allowed himself to think of a life that belonged only to him. He carried a small bag with 2 shirts, a loaf of bread wrapped in cloth, a harmonica, and a letter promising work at a steel factory in New Jersey. As the Titanic's horn boomed across the water at noon, a wave of excitement rolled through every deck. First-class passengers waved handkerchiefs from the promenade, third-class families leaned over rails clutching children and suitcases, and crew members shouted commands as ropes were pulled in. The ship vibrated as its engines awakened. Eleanor stood at the railing with her sketchbook open, trying to capture the moment, but her hand trembled with a thrill she had never felt before. Liam stood far below on the well deck, staring upward at the monstrous white superstructure and feeling as if his new life had already begun. The departure felt like the turning of a page in a story none of them yet understood. The first day at sea was filled with music, laughter, and the gentle rocking of the ship cutting through calm waters. Eleanor wandered through the first-class lounges, but nothing sparked her interest. The wealthy passengers spoke only of business, fashion, investments, and gossip. Her father introduced her to men he hoped she would impress: bankers, lawyers, heirs, but Eleanor's mind drifted with every polite conversation. She longed for something real, something raw, something outside the gilded cages of first-class privilege. Liam spent the day exploring the lower decks, joking with fellow passengers, admiring the ship's modern wonders, and playing lively tunes on his harmonica for children. The ship gave him hope, and the open ocean made his heart lighter than it had been in years. It was on the second day that fate brought Eleanor and Liam into the same moment. Eleanor, longing to escape the suffocating formality around her, wandered deeper into the ship than she ever had before. She followed her curiosity down a stairwell that grew plainer with each step. The smell of polished wood faded into the scent of iron and engine oil. She found herself in a corridor filled with crew and third-class passengers. Meanwhile, Liam had been asked by a friendly steward to help fix a loose hinge near the forward stairs. He knelt on one knee, hands stained with grease, focusing intently on tightening the bolts. Eleanor paused at the top of the staircase, watching him without meaning to. He looked different from the men she knew. There was no arrogance, no mask, no practiced charm. He looked honest. When Liam glanced up, surprised, their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. "I didn't mean to intrude," Eleanor said, clutching her sketchbook to her chest. "You're not intruding," Liam replied, quickly wiping his hands on his trousers. "I'm just trying to keep the ship in one piece." Eleanor smiled, unable to hold back a quiet laugh. "Let's hope it stays that way." They spoke for only a minute. About Ireland, about art, about the voyage, but the brief conversation left both of them thinking of the other long after they parted. That evening, as first-class passengers dined beneath crystal chandeliers, music drifted through the ship from the third-class common room. Laughter, fiddles, stomping feet. Eleanor slipped away from the formal dinner, ducked past stewards who tried to redirect her, and followed the music like a moth to light. The moment she stepped into the third-class space, her breath caught. People danced without worry of etiquette, children spun and giggled, old men clapped along rhythmically. It was warm, alive, and filled with joy. And right in the middle of it all stood Liam, harmonica in hand. His laughter blended with the music as if he had created it. When he saw her, surprise lit his face, followed by unmistakable delight. Eleanor felt her cheeks flush as she approached him. "You came," he said above the noise. "I did," she replied. "I wanted to see the real fun." He laughed, and they began talking until a lively tune started. With some encouragement from the others, Liam took her hand and taught her a simple dance. She stumbled, laughed, stumbled again, but he held her steady without a hint of judgment. For the first time in her life, Eleanor felt real freedom, not the polite, restrained freedom of wealth, but the freedom of pure, simple happiness. But word traveled quickly: a first-class girl dancing in third class. Scandalous. Eleanor's father summoned her the next morning and reprimanded her sharply. He warned her about mingling with people below her class, and demanded she avoid such behavior. Eleanor argued, but he shut her down with stern authority. Liam, too, heard whispers that he had danced with a first-class girl. Some teased him, others warned him he would get into trouble. He told no one how deeply he hoped to see her again. By the fourth day, the temperature dropped sharply. Passengers bundled in coats, and thin sheets of frost dusted the railings. Crew members received multiple ice warnings from other ships, but the Titanic continued at nearly full speed. Captain Edward Smith believed in the ship's design, and the owners wanted to break crossing records. Most passengers remained unaware of the danger. That evening, Eleanor escaped the suffocating first-class atmosphere once again and found Liam on the well deck, leaning over the railing and watching the dark ocean pass beneath the stars. The night sky was so clear, so vast, that the sea looked like a black mirror reflecting the heavens. "Cold night," Liam murmured when he saw her approaching. "Colder than I expected," Eleanor replied. "But I'm glad I came." They talked for hours, about dreams, fears, childhood memories, and the future they hoped for. Liam confessed how he wanted to bring his younger sister to America someday. Eleanor confessed how she wanted to paint something meaningful, something that made people feel. They were from different worlds, yet their hearts seemed to walk the same path. The more they talked, the more they realized how rare it was to feel understood. Before parting, Liam hesitated. "Do you think we'll meet again after this voyage?" Eleanor's breath caught. "I hope so," she whispered. Neither noticed the icy wind picking up, carrying with it a warning written across the dark waves. At 11:40 p.m., Titanic's lookout spotted a massive iceberg looming ahead. They rang the bell 3 times and called the bridge. Officers reacted instantly, turning the wheel, reversing the engines, but the ship's enormous size made sharp reactions impossible. The iceberg scraped along Titanic's starboard side with a rumbling growl. Most passengers felt only a mild shudder. A few thought the ship had run over a wave. In first class, Eleanor looked up from her sketchbook, startled. In third class, Liam paused mid-conversation, instinctively sensing trouble. Below deck, water began flooding in, unstoppable, pouring through torn steel. 15 minutes later, crew members began knocking on cabin doors, urging passengers to dress and go to the boat deck. Confusion spread. Titanic seemed unshakable. How could it be sinking? Eleanor stepped out of her cabin in a daze as her father pulled her along urgently. She scanned the crowd desperately, her heart thudding. Somewhere below, Liam fought through the rising panic of the lower decks, determined to reach her. They found each other near the grand staircase as the ship grew more frantic. Eleanor threw herself into Liam's arms, ignoring the shocked stares from wealthy passengers. Her father tried to pull her away, but she clung to Liam. The tilt of the ship became more noticeable. Lifeboats were being uncovered. Crew members shouted orders. People pushed, argued, or stood frozen with fear. Liam grabbed Eleanor's shoulders. "You have to get into a lifeboat. I'm not leaving you. You must," he insisted, voice cracking. "Lie, please." She shook her head fiercely, tears streaming down her face. "Not without you." Her father and several crewmen pulled her toward a lifeboat as she reached back for Liam. He cupped her face, kissed her with a desperate mix of love and fear, then helped guide her into the boat. She screamed his name as the ropes lowered her toward the dark sea. Moments later, chaos swallowed him again. The ship tilted sharply as water gushed through the corridors. People slipped, fell, screamed. Third-class passengers were trapped behind locked gates, pounding and crying as crew tried to free them. Liam forced doors open, led families toward the upper decks, lifted children over railings, and shouted until his voice went hoarse. He refused to save only himself. The orchestra played through the nightmare, music floating eerily across the dying ship. Nearer, my God, to thee, echoed as lights flickered, sparks rained down, and the Titanic groaned like a wounded beast. Eleanor watched from her lifeboat, sobbing uncontrollably. She could see silhouettes clinging to the railings. She could hear gunshots, collapsing metal, human cries filling the frozen air. She prayed blindly for Liam to survive, for a miracle, for anything that could change what she knew was coming. At 2:20 a.m., the Titanic broke apart, the stern rising into the sky before plunging into the depths with thunderous force. Eleanor cried out as horror consumed her. Hundreds of people were thrown into the freezing sea, Liam among them. The icy water hit Liam like 1,000 knives. He gasped, struggled to stay afloat, clung to debris. All around him voices called out, pleaded, prayed. But within minutes, most grew silent as the cold claimed them. Eleanor covered her ears, unable to bear the screams. The lifeboat rowed away, though she begged them to go back. She could not stop trembling. Her heart felt split open. When dawn finally arrived, the rescue ship Carpathia appeared on the horizon. Sailors pulled survivors aboard, wrapped them in blankets, tended to frostbite and shock. Eleanor stepped onto the Carpathia with blank eyes, unable to speak. She stood at the rail for hours, watching the sea, hoping to see Liam's face appear among the rescued. But he never did. Days later, when the Carpathia reached New York, reporters swarmed the survivors. Eleanor answered none of their questions. She held her sketchbook tightly, the only thing she had left from the voyage. She drew the ocean again and again, trying to capture the place where she had lost everything. Years passed. Eleanor became an artist known for her haunting seascapes, dark, vast, and emotional. Her paintings always included a small figure in the distance, barely visible, like a soul waiting just beyond reach. Some critics called him the ghost of the Atlantic. Eleanor never corrected them. She never married. She never returned to Southampton. She never boarded another ship. Every April 15th, she walked to the shore and sat alone, sketchbook in hand, listening to the waves that whispered memories she could never forget. She lived her life honoring the boy who had shown her what love and courage meant in just 4 days, the boy who had changed her heart forever. The world remembers Titanic as a tragedy. Eleanor remembered it as the place where she found love, lost it, and carried its echo for the rest of her life.